Hey everybody, it's Matt. Welcome back to the Journey Church podcast. If you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe to this podcast so you can automatically get our weekly episodes. And you might want to go ahead and subscribe to our Journey YouTube channel as well. You'll find messages, music, interviews, inspiring stories, and more for you all right there. Now, I hope this episode helps you take your next step in following Jesus.
What is your family's favorite question right now? What's the question that keeps popping up over and over again with your family? I'll share you with mine, a very popular question around the house. In our household, because of my time schedule, I get to work really early before the kids leave for school, but I'm the one that goes to pick them up. So I'm often home making dinner, but I don't plan the meals. You don't want to depend on me to organize any kind of meal prep. I just need to know what we making, right? And I know how to make it and put it on the table, but my wife plans all that out. So I will often, in the morning before she gets up, be thinking about, I wonder what I need to be, and I'll send her a text message, and sometime in the morning, she'll answer the question, hey, what's for dinner tonight? And she'll know what's on the menu, and she'll send me a text message, okay, great. Usually I'll get home, and one of the kids will ask me, hey, what's for dinner tonight? Because they all come home at different times, and I'll be like, oh, it's pizza tonight. And the second child will come home and go, what's for dinner tonight? And I'll be like, it's pizza. The third child will come home, what's for dinner tonight? It's pizza. They don't ever talk to one another. You know what I'm saying? And then I kid you not, I am not joking at all. My wife will come in, and I've got dinner just about ready because my timing is perfect. And she walks in, and one of the kids will go, what's for dinner tonight? I'm like, I just told you an hour ago. Like, it's funny. That's the question. There are other questions that happen maybe in your family. Hey, middle school and high school students, you with me? I bet you think your family's favorite question is, hey, when are you going to finish your homework? Or when are you going to clean your room? Or how long are you going to be on YouTube today? Like, are those the questions that you think are your family's favorite question? I know it's probably one of those three. I often ask a lot of those questions myself. For those of you in your 20s, maybe your favorite question, I know it was for me, it's like, hey, what's going on this weekend? What are we doing this weekend? What's going on? And the second question right after that was, I wonder if I have the money to do that. We'll worry about it later. For those of you who are grandparents in the room, I bet you think your family's favorite question is, hey, could you keep the kids this weekend? Oh, there are some grandparents in the room. Okay, yeah. Are there some parents in the room feeling, yeah, I ask that a lot, right? I don't know what it is. You figure out what your favorite question is. Here's what I know. Questions drive behaviors. The questions that come up with your family are what drive our attitudes and our behaviors, right? So if it's a simple driving question for your family, it's going to drive the perspective. It's going to drive the attitude of everybody in the household. It's going to drive what you end up doing and how you treat the people in your house. So questions are important. All I'm asking you to do for a few minutes today is think about the questions that are driving your family. And I'm actually going to give you one question I think you should use and replace and make it your new family's favorite question that can move your family in a totally different direction, no matter how dysfunctional you feel like it is. So we're all in the same boat. We all have some dysfunction. There are all some things going on. And I just want to review last week. And if you weren't here last week, let me give you just maybe some breathing room because you're already feeling like a little tense about this topic. And let me just calm you down. We all know, Matt talked about this last week, that there is an ideal situation for your family. Like we all have this perfect ideal. For some of you, it's like, man, I just want my kids to behave when we go to a restaurant. If we could just get them not to climb over the booth and pull the lady's hair. Like if we could just do that, it'd be like ideal situation. Some of you, it's like ideal situation would be great. Like if everybody would get together the holidays and they'd gather together and that one person that we don't want to come wouldn't show up, that would be ideal. But then everybody else that I do want to show up shows up and we don't argue about anything. Like if we could just sit and enjoy the meal and maybe the meal prep is just like perfect. Like you have in your head the ideal situations. For some of you, it's this ideal of what marriage is supposed to look like. And with your in-laws, and everybody gets along, and how that's supposed to work. For some of you, it's just, you have very small ideals, but there's something we all dream about our families looking like and operating like. And there's this thing that just keeps getting in the way. It's reality. Because I don't know about you guys, but for my family, I know I have this ideal in my head, but sometimes it just does not work. And some of you are in the same boat. Some of you are right now going, man, divorce and sharing kids after your divorce is hard. And that wasn't the ideal I thought about when I first got married. But now that I'm in this situation, there's a reality that hits, and it makes this difficult. It's complicated to parent kids when you don't have a partner that you're parenting with. right? Or for some of you, it's just your marriage. You didn't realize when you had kids how much stress it would put on you two, and it feels like you don't even know each other anymore. All you do is talk about what the kids need, and that's all that happens in the evening, and you feel like, man, I'm getting so pulled away from the person that I said I want to spend my life with, and man, it feels so complicated and difficult. And for some of you in the room, you're watching your adult children, and you're looking at them making mistakes that you wish you could keep them from making, and you want to be there for them, but you're trying not to step in and be that grandparent and that parent, but you're watching them going, please don't do that, please don't do that. And the reality sets in, and we all go, Matt said this last week, and this got me so much. We all look at our reality, and we want to make ourselves feel okay, so instead of looking at this ideal, we just lower the ideal so we can make it work, right? But that's not the way that God wanted us to work. He actually did something to solve that problem. Matt went over, if you didn't see and hear last week's message, you got to go back and watch it. Matt did a great job of this, but Jesus actually said he came along to fill that gap because there's a gap between the ideal and the real. But the reason Jesus came is because he knew we wouldn't always get it right. He knew that sometimes we would hurt people that we loved the most. He knew that sometimes there would be family situations that aren't ideal, but how do we keep from lowering the standards so that we don't stop working for what's best for our family and the people in it? Instead, we keep the ideal as the point of reference for all of us. But how do we deal with the guilt? Well, here's what Jesus said. He said, I came to forgive the guilt. My grace is greater than all your guilt. And the forgiveness I offer is deeper than anything you could do. So if you can trust me, you'll be able to pursue the ideal, even in face of reality. If you could somehow hold on to the both, I'm in this reality, but there's an ideal I can keep shooting for because Jesus fills the gap with his grace. That's where we want to go with this entire series, and that's what today's message is going to help you kind of navigate and start thinking about. So here's where I want to go today. I'm actually going to go to a passage in a book in the Bible called Colossians. It was written by a guy named Paul. If you're not familiar, Paul was one of the earliest followers of Jesus, and he wrote most of our New Testament. He wrote the letters to different churches around, and this is one letter, and I don't know how to say the city in Greece. It's Colossae, or Colossae. I don't know. They're just Colossians. They lived in the city, right? And Paul writes to this church over there because they're dealing with these issues, and he's writing advice because here's what Paul knows. Paul knows that Jesus modeled for us the ideal throughout his whole life with all the relationships in his life. And Paul starts to try to give advice on how the family should operate, and he starts to set this ideal up so that we can see what the real idea is based on how Jesus modeled it for us. And the ideal situation, listen, you're going to hear this in a second, and you're going to like, whoa, that's really ideal. That's way ideal. I'm not sure if we ever get there. Listen, just calm down for a second. Just focus on what Paul's trying to do. In his own culture, just like ours today, there were broken families, there was dysfunction, things didn't work out. I know it was a different family context for Paul when he's writing this letter. I know that, women of that day did not have any real rights at all. So wives, you would not have had any say in whether or not your husband did whatever. The husband ruled everything, and that's not so different in some families today, but let's just be honest, women get to vote now. There's some things that have gotten better since then, but there's still some gap between that, right? And husbands, for you guys, like today, I know this is going to be a difficult issue because it's not just about the wives, it's about you as well. And hey, students, high school, middle schoolers, you looking at me? This is about you. It mentions you today. So I know we're not having transit, and our middle schoolers should be in here. And if they're not, by golly, parents, get them here next week. This family series is for them. I'm talking to you middle schoolers right here, me and you, face to face. All right? So then we talk to parents. Okay, so Paul's letter, I know you've probably seen this passage taught, and it was broken up into pieces, but I'm going to read it all together because I want you to group it together, just like your family. And I'll try to give you a perspective on this piece of this letter from Paul that hopefully will give you a brand new perspective on how your family can work towards an ideal together as a unified whole and not as separate people. Okay, so let's dive into Colossians chapter 3. Here's what it says. Wives, submit to your husbands as is fitting in the Lord. Wives, number one. Number two, husbands, love your wives and do not be harsh with them. Husbands, you got it? So we've addressed wives. Husbands, who do we go to next? Children, obey your parents in everything, for this pleases the Lord. Wives, husbands, children. Let's go back and talk to the parents as a whole. Because we talked about husbands and wives together. Now we're going to talk about parents to their children because we talked about children to the parents. Fathers, do not embitter your children or they will become discouraged. This is not supposed to be taken just one at a time. They're all together. Paul looks at the entire family and says, wives to husbands, husbands to wives, kids to family, adults to kids. All of you together. Here's what you should be doing. You do your part. Wives, you do your part to support your husbands. Husbands, you do your part to love your wives and not be harsh. Children, you do your part. You obey your parents. And fathers and mothers, but in his day, fathers, you don't set rules that are just going to make your children bitter and discouraged all the time. Ouch, dads, right? I don't know about you, but this is convicting for the whole family. This is the ideal situation. The ideal situation from Paul for what we as Jesus following families are supposed to do. This is the ideal. We all do whatever we can. And the ideal is this, is to be in mutual submission to one another. Now, Matt has talked about this before, but let me do my best in terms of this. This just means that mutual submission, we are all looking out for the needs of the other. That's all mutual submission really means. It means that I'm taking whatever I've got and I'm using it for the good of the people in my household. And listen, if you're not sure you're a follower of Jesus, you're not sure about this whole Jesus and God thing, that's fine. What we're going to talk about today can still help you navigate healthy relationships with your family, and it will change the direction of your family if you'll do today what we're going to ask you to do. But listen, if you're a Jesus following family, you got to understand that the reality is we're all still dysfunctional. We all don't get this right all the time. We all don't quite do the right thing at the right time for the right people, and sometimes we're selfish. I, as a dad, sometimes do not realize how harsh my tone is with my children, and I have definitely embittered them and discouraged them by the way I've talked to them. Full-on confession right there. But I know this, I have the grace of Jesus to cover me in this, and my goal is to shoot for mutual submission. Now, a lot of you in the room are like, whoa, but you don't know my wife. Ain't no way she's going to buy into this. You don't know my husband. There's no way he's ever going to do that. And kids in the room are like, you don't know my parents. They ain't ever going to help me out, right? All they do is tell me what to do for them. And some of the parents in the room are like, you don't know my kids. They are good for nothings. I know your kids are perfect and all that because you're a pastor, but, right? Well, let me just talk about my kids for a second, okay? Let's just talk about them. Because if everybody's supposed to be serving everybody else, let me just call my kids out for a second. Ain't none of them asked to help do the dishes ever. I did this first service and my girls were sitting back in here and I was looking at them right in the face. I was like, y'all going to ask this week? Right? Because, hey, let's just be honest. If we're supposed to be mutually submissive to one another, let me just be real practical with you. Let me give you some guides. Here's what it should look like. Your time, your money, all your resources. Kids are like, I ain't got no money. You have things in your room and in your household that your parents or grandparents have given you. And guess what? You get to kind of own them. I know you don't really get to own your Xbox, but you kind of do. Energy, abilities, your talents, the things that you're good at, the power you have in your family, the authority you've been given in your family, and the influence you have with the other people in your family. Do you realize that all of that is not just for your good? It's for the good of all the other people in your family. That's what mutual submission means. Mutual submission looks like this. It means when you think about how much time you have after work, you try to leverage the good time you do have for the people in your household. It looks like you going, yeah, these are my abilities and I'm really good at this. And you use it for people at work all the time and you use it for the community out there, but do you use it for the people in your own household? Like, this is about shifting your perspective. To think about the family all pursuing, and you're like, yeah, but we can't get everybody to buy in. We'll talk about that in a second. But what if, for a second, your whole family bought into this idea that we're going to look out for the needs of each other. And I'm going to do for you what is best for you, and they're going to do for me what's best for me, and we keep this moving forward. The reality is we won't get it right every day, but what if the ideal is this? Not some other version of family where we talk bad behind the back, and then we're straight to their face, and we're nice when we're there, and then we're creating tension because we just don't really care what the kids are doing this weekend. I don't really even care. I'm just tired from work. Y'all go do your thing. I really don't want to spend any time with y'all. Please get out. Or what it is when you come home from work, and your husband's doing this, and you're like, I'm not doing dinner. He can get his own deal. Whatever happens elsewhere in reality, what if we could just switch the whole thing around? We could move our hearts toward mutual submission. Where everybody's watching out for everybody else. So, let me just ask the question I want you guys to be asking your family. I hope this next question I put on the screen, that you'll make it your favorite family question. Because this one question, and now you're going to look at it and you'll be like, that's so simple. I know it's simple. A lot of the best things in life are simple to think about, but really hard to do, aren't they? Everybody in this room knows how to keep their body healthy, what to eat and exercise. Simple, but difficult. You ready? Here's your question for your family. What can I do to help? Okay, that's it. What can I do to help? You can do that, right? You can ask that question. Here's what my kids should be asking. Dad, how can I help do the dishes tonight? That's what my kids should be asking. They probably won't. Listen, students in the room, what would happen to your parents if tomorrow morning when you woke up, say, 11:30 a.m., and you sent a text message say, hey, I just got up. I'm really tired from last night because I was up till 2 a.m. playing Xbox, but what can I do to help, Mom? Your mom, first of all, would drop dead on the spot, and your dad would have to go pick her up. Like, he would be like, wake up, wake up. Like, that would be, but what would change about your heart, students, if you switched from, well, summer's my time to do what I want to, I can offer a little bit of my time and a little bit of my abilities and a little bit of my resources to add value to my parents at home. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this pleases him. What if you could just do that? Hey, wives, I know you working all day and you come home and it feels like sometimes you're the only one doing anything. But what if you just ask the questions, what is the most important thing for me to do right now to help my family? What if it's not everything that's going through your brain? What if you're not worried about that whole to-do list? What if it's just, what can I do to help right now? What if you could narrow it down in your brain and you could cut just one really important thing off of that list? I know there's 17 other things that are running right here, but what if you could just narrow it down? What can I do to help right now? Husbands, what if you could ask this question and in sincerity actually want to do it once you've asked it and got the answer? Not like I do, which is ask the question, hey, is there anything I can do to help? Good, because I wasn't going to do it anyway. Right? Because I've been busy. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. No. What if we could switch? What if we could move our focus to adding value to people in our lives? Because, hey, high school students are in the room. You remember what we talked about last Wednesday? You probably don't remember. I'm going to remind you. I gave you this question without giving you this question last week. Remember I said at the very end, the challenge of doing this and serving and giving and enjoying the people around you, when you start to serve and do for others what is good for them, you become the person who everybody wants to be around. Students, if you can do this for your family will love being around you. You're like, I don't want my family to be around you. Well, listen, what if you could start the party with them? Like you were serving so well that your parents started to ask the same question back. Listen, I know everybody's scared to ask this question because you're afraid of actually having to do something on the other end of it, right? We're scared of the answer. We're scared of how much it may take from us. But listen, if you're a follower of Jesus, do you understand that when you ask this question and you do it, you're following his footsteps? It's what he modeled for us. And when you model what Jesus did, you get something greater than what you think you'll get. Because you think it's going to take so much from you, but when you begin to ask this question and really love the people around you and add value to life, but whatever way you can, you start to get something in return. And I can't quite explain it. Now, I've kind of made fun of my kids, but I will tell you something they're really good at. My kids are all very artistic. And they don't know how much joy I get out of the art that they create in our home. And that's a small thing that they do with their abilities that I get to watch and enjoy. And they're offering it free because God gave them certain gifts and they use them for my good. And it's not difficult, it's not hard for them to do. My birthday was filled with homemade gifts and cards. My children played music in the house. My children do these little things and they think they're just doing it. But listen, they don't realize it, but it's for me. It adds value to my life. So listen, this doesn't have to be a hard, difficult thing. But I want to challenge you guys, everybody in the room. Everybody's got a family here. And if you don't have family, listen, we'll find you some family. Find some friends and people around you to be your family to try to do this experiment this week. You have a 7-day experiment. The experiment is this. Ask this question for the next 7 days. Once a day, what can I do to help? Kids, be careful when you ask it. You're going to get an answer that you do not want. Husbands, you're going to get an answer you do not want. Wives, you are going to get an answer you do not want. That is okay. You're not asking it to get the answer you want. You're asking it to practice. I'm going to go back to my life for a second. You ready? I'm a runner. I haven't run in like a month because end of school, right? Am I right? I had a graduating high school, end of school, couldn't run. I'm looking forward to getting back to running. Running is a habit for me. You know how running became a habit for me? It was not going for runs. See, I thought in the beginning, the first couple years of running, I thought the key was to go for a run. And if I went for a run, that would produce the habit. That did not work. Because I would dread the run some days because I didn't feel good. The weather was going to be kind of iffy. And I'd be like, I'm not going for a run today. I've already made it in my mind. I'm not going. You know what fixed that problem for me? It was very weird. I put on my running clothes. That was the key. That was the habit. If I put on my running clothes, even if I was tired, I might do dinner and I might make dinner and I might be doing the dishes. By the time the dishes were done, I'd be like, I'll have to change out of these if I don't go for a run. And I'd go for a run. So listen, when you think about making this a habit, you're making a habit this week. You're trying it out for 7 days in a row. And you've got to find out what it is that's going to trigger you to move toward these questions. Students, you already got your phone up. I'm always surprised how little teenagers know that you can talk to your phone and tell it to remind you to do something every day. Did you know that you can tell your phone, even Androids do this, remind me every day this week at noon to ask, what can I do to help? Did you know it will do that? Students, you didn't know? Now you know, and knowing is half the battle. G.I. Joe. Nobody remembers? Okay. Listen, adults, it may take you putting something on your desk when you leave at work. There's this little thing you'll look at as you close your computer and you set it says, what can I do to help? It may be when you get home, right there on the refrigerator, what can I do to help? It may be you having to generate some emotional energy around that question. When I don't feel like asking these questions, you know what I have to do? I have to stop and pause and do this. I love my kids. I love my wife. I have to pause. Because the temptation in that moment is not to ask the question. Because in the moment, all I'm thinking about is me and how tired I am and what I need and what I need to do. Man, listen, I'm the dad. They're supposed to be doing the dishes for me. Right? I'm just talking about me. I don't know about you. I'm just talking about me. So in that moment, I've got to remember, can I ask this question full on with my heart toward my kids, toward my wife, toward the people in my family, with the right attitude? Do you see how this question shifts you from selfishness to giving? And listen, if you're not a follower of Jesus, you won't, this next part is not for you. But listen, if you're a follower of Jesus, I want you to understand something. This is not optional. This wasn't like some suggestion for you. This is what Jesus did for you and why you're a part of the family of God in the first place. Jesus did for you what you did not deserve. See, you don't serve your family and ask them this question because they deserve it. They don't. They're actually not that great. Kids, your parents aren't amazing. I hate to tell you, but they're just normal people. Like you're starting to realize that as a 13, 14-year-old, you look at your parents and you're like, man, you're just a normal dude who's not very great at anything. Right? That's that realization. Y'all remember, all the adults are like, yeah, I remember thinking that. Listen, you don't serve them because they deserve it. Jesus didn't die for you because you deserved it. Romans chapter 5, Paul wrote these letters to the church in Rome. Here's what he said in this verse. You see, at just the right time, when we were still powerless, Christ died for the ungodly. You know why we ask, what can I do to help of our family? It's because of what Jesus did for us when we did not deserve it and we had no power to change it ourselves. We were powerless and ungodly. And he came and asked the question, what can I do to help anyway? And you know what he could do to help? He modeled it. He washed his disciples' feet. He served and loved them well. He served and loved the people in his community. He healed as many people as he could. He walked around and told the people who were unloved that they were lovable. He told the sinners that they were still acceptable. And he looked at every one of his disciples and said, I know you failed me, and I know you walked away when I died, but I came back to life to tell you you're still loved. And he tells us that every single day. If you're a wife and you have messed this up, and you follow Jesus, you don't keep asking this question because you did it right yesterday. You keep asking this question because Jesus did it right for you. Husbands, if you're failing at this, you don't have to lower the standard and say, well, that's just the way I'm going to be. No. You look at the forgiveness that Jesus gave you, and you look at what he did for you, and you use that as motivation to do it better tomorrow. Children, you don't obey your parents because they're always right. You obey your parents because in faith you're serving them because of what Jesus did for you. Do you see how that switches everything? It should change your perspective. From what can I get out of the people around me to what can I give to the people around me? And that is hard work. It must be created in you. But listen, here's the bigger thing. We talk about being for this community. And I know, listen, a lot of you are here, and I've heard your stories. You're here because this is the first time you've seen a group of people who are following Jesus go out and try to be for those people out there. I'm going to tell you this right up front. You can't be truly for this community if you're not for the people you live with. So you start with the people you have to go to bed with at night, and you start with the people you have to eat dinner with every night, and you be for them. And you start to break away the selfishness of your heart with them, and you see if it doesn't release more into the community. Because here's what I know and here's what I dream about. A whole bunch of families who are committed to one another in this way, that when they go to the ball fields and the soccer fields and the football stands and the cheer competitions, and when they go out in the community to all the restaurants, their kids may not be perfectly behaved, but by golly, those parents are trying to make sure that they know that those kids are served well when they get home. And those wives and husbands that are out there, they're serving each other so well that everybody else in the community goes, man, there's something going on with that family. That's kind of crazy. They're dysfunctional, but they still love each other and forgive each other. They keep moving forward and try to do better. I've already given up on mine. What if we could do that? I don't know what your dream is, but that's my dream. And I'm not letting go of the ideal, even though today I'll probably mess it up. Because I keep coming back to what Jesus did for me. And his grace is sufficient. It fills the gap between the ideal and the real. You guys realize that? That gap, let's go back to that gap. It feels so far away, doesn't it? Mutual submission, we're never going to get there. You may not get there. But isn't it worth fighting for? Isn't it worth your energy and your time to try to move your family in that direction no matter how dysfunctional you are right now? I know what the reality may look like for you, but isn't it worth the energy to move that direction? And Jesus is walking right beside you. So your question for the next 7 days, and I hope it continues on, is what can I do to help? You answer that question. You make that the question the center of your family, and it will shift your entire perspective. And I believe it'll change this entire community for the better. Let me pray for us. Father in heaven, God, forgive me when I have broken trust with my kids and my own family, when I have messed this up, when I have been selfish, when I've been working through my own stuff and ignored them. But God, please forgive me. I know your forgiveness is available, so I ask for it now. And God, for the people in this room who feel like their shame and guilt is too heavy to bear, God, I pray that your forgiveness, your death and your resurrection will become their hope and their answer. And God, I pray that the families in this room, even though there's so much dysfunction in all our families, God, I pray that we would not let go of this ideal, that we become mutually submissive to one another. We begin to serve one another out of the goodness of what we've gotten from you, that we give it away to the other people, and then we don't let the reality keep us from loving each other well. And I ask these things because I believe that our families are worth the effort, God, and we want to keep giving that effort to the people around us that we live with the closest and we love the most. And I ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Hey guys, come back next week. Matt will be back next week to part 3. And I'll be back in 2 weeks on part 4 to wrap it up and what you do if you can't reconcile with somebody. You guys have a great week.
Hey, if you'd like more content like this, subscribe to our YouTube channel and download our Journey app to access all of our recent message content. And our app is the easiest way to share this content with a friend. For more information on our church or to find our app or our YouTube channel, just visit journeycalway.com. That's journeycalway.com. Thanks for listening.